Grove Hall and surrounding parts of Dorchester and Roxbury are a hub for businesses, especially serving residents who need to shop in their own neighborhood. In recent years, the area's potential has also been explored in pathways to opportunities, whether in education or developing businesses to serve a larger territory. That approach will be highlighted Thursday night in a fundraiser being sponsored by the Greater Grove Hall Main Streets. To tell us about the event is the program's executive director, Ed Gaskin. Thank you very much for being with us, Ed.
Yes, sir.
And talk about this pattern that you're working on here, because you have these events every year and you have somebody who has been very successful in the world outside and you have them come to Grove Hall. What's the strategy around that?
Well, the original idea, in fact, we didn't even have a speaker in our first few years, and the original idea was, as one of my board members said, you're only going to get so much money from the barber shop. And so we reached high. We actually had invited John Fish, the chairman of Suffolk Construction. I think that was like a $3 billion construction company, whatever. And somebody that was like I remember in Boston Magazine, it talked about the 50 most influential people in Boston, and he was number 1 and the mayor was number 3. And so the question was, how do we start making connections and relationships with people that actually had, networks and contacts and resources that might be able to help us revitalize the community? And so we started with that. That became very successful, and we've stayed with it.
Well, at one time, economic opportunity for people around the Greater Grove Hall area meant you got a job at Cassanoff's and you made bread that was sold in these supermarkets around the Greater Boston area. Today, you have another kind of food model. Tell us about that one.
You mean in the Commonwealth Kitchen?
Yes, exactly.
Well, Jen Vagel is probably the best person to tell you about it, but it's an incubator space to help food businesses start up. It also helps supply a lot of the food trucks in the area. So I'd say that's become a hub. I think she'd be able to give you the statistics in terms of the number of new businesses started there. There were businesses that started there that have moved out because they've outgrown it. But that actually is very successful, and that probably is going to be a model in other places.
Now, this is a small piece of a bigger problem, and I'm sure you've given a lot of thought to, and that's the divide in wealth and income, the racial divide in that. How does your work at Grove Hall Main Streets address that?
So you started out by talking how like Terry Williams at One United Bank that talks about the issue of buying black, and she has an ad called Banking Black. So there's that kind of thing, making it possible to shop and do other things within the community. And sometimes, for instance, when people do outside economic analysis, they'll talk about leakage. How much money do people leave that community and spend in another community? So if you had those businesses in the same community, it would actually help the community. I've tried to be a little bit more progressive than that, and that's why, as you know from the past, we did the Mass Innovation Nights in there, and that was where we were focusing on technology. In that particular case, we said only like 1% of all tech firms are founded by an African or African American or a person of color, including like Hispanic Americans, but there's a lot of wealth there. And so it just seemed as though if you have the Greater Boston area known as an innovative area, that some of that innovation and technology might be able to spill over onto this side of the Charles River, and making those kind of connections. But what are the other, as you used earlier, what are the other pathways to creating wealth and opportunity? I always look back at because they talk about minority set-asides and things like that. I always look back at the Central Artery and the Third Harbor Tunnel and the $20-something billion that was spent, and if 10% of that had come to the community, we would have not just millionaires, we'd have billionaires. I can't point to one African-American millionaire that became a result of that project. And I know Councilor Janey has tried to put some more focus on the city of Boston's procurement. I don't think we've made much headway in any of those kind of programs. So my focus in terms of from the Greater Grove Hall Main Street, what other avenues, whatever can we use to succeed? And this is just one of them.
Well, speaking of millionaires or billionaires, you have one coming to this event Thursday night.
Well, that is a delight. So we have Bill Cummings. Some people will know him as the founder of Cummings Properties, a self-made billionaire, and now he's a multi-billionaire. And people may have seen some of his properties like in Woburn or Beverly. He has like 11 million square feet of commercial real estate. It's all debt-free. And he was actually the first person in the state of Massachusetts to take the giving pledge that Bill Gates had to say that they were going to give away 90% of their wealth. And so with the Cummings Foundation, he's decided that each year he's giving 100 nonprofits $100,000 each, and 25 nonprofits, I think, $500,000. And so the issue was, from our perspective, is how do you get to actually meet and touch and talk to people like that? So it's not every day that we have billionaires in the neighborhoods of Greater Grove Hall, and so this is one of those things.
Now, he's supported some groups in Grove Hall, hasn't he?
He has supported some groups in Grove Hall. He's supported Freedom House. He's supported Project Right. I think he's supported the zoo, and there's some other ones that I don't remember.
Chris, now this is an event you're going to have some awards, giving some recognition to people. Also, a former detective, I think, too, right?
Yeah, so the 4 people that we're giving awards, so we're giving Christine Poff, you probably know her from the community
Parks
development.
advocate, right.
From the parks. And again, you're probably thinking, what's the tie? Well, the Franklin Park and Franklin Park Zoo and the golf course, part of that is in Grove Hall. And they get 1 million visitors a year, not 1 million unique visitors. In other words, if you're a guy that runs 5 days a week and you run in the park, that counts as 5 visits. But so you get 1 million visits a year. But so you have that kind of economic activity, and one of the things that we've tried to do is leverage that in terms of how do you get those people who come there, because people come from Maine, wherever, to the zoo, and how do you get them to actually shop or eat or do something in Grove Hall before they get in their car and drive all the way back to Maine. But we've really appreciated Christine's work for sort of stewarding the park and those kind of resources. Then we have BECMA, the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. They've done a great job since they've started, and they're advancing on that thing about economic opportunities, helping buy black, helping people with black procurement, and so we want to give their executive director an award. You mentioned the detective, Ellis Thornton. I think he's like 30, almost 40 years of being a detective on the Boston Police Force, and he's retiring now. Actually, last great claim to fame is he was one of the detectives on the Boston Marathon bombing, and we wanted to recognize his lifetime commitment to improving public safety. And then Bruce Wall, who has the radio show, has the church and TV, etc. And he certainly, for us, has been able to be an advocate for the community. And certainly we've had different programs or projects. He's allowed us or made it possible for us to get the word out.
Well, speaking of getting the word out, the event's going to be happening on Thursday. At what time and what part of the Franklin Park Zoo?
This Thursday, Franklin Park Zoo. And so, as you know, within the zoo, there's like the front and back entrance, and they call the back entrance the giraffe entrance. And it's in the tropical rainforest, for those people who are familiar with it. And then inside there, from 6 to 9, we'll have this event. So even if you have nothing else, we have great food. So we have some food from Alabama Rib Shack. So we have barbecue chicken, jerk chicken, ribs, all the whatever. So we have some great food. We have these people who are going to get their awards. We have Bill speaking. And it also gives us a chance to just talk a little about some of the things that we've accomplished in the last year and some of the projects that we're working on. I may have talked about it before, but one of the things we're doing is developing the smartphone app that has basically 100 points of interest from like the turn of the century to the present in between Grove Hall and Dudley Square, that people can go on tours, whatever. So everything from seeing like this mile marker that was developed or created by Paul Revere, to Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and all those other kinds of historical landmarks in the area. So we'll talk about that. We also will be rolling out this project that we're just starting, where we're doing, those banners that go on the street lights? So we actually are doing a new series on it's called Black Women Lead, and it's about, we hope to do 30 or 40 of them. We've got the first 10 or 12 done, and it's basically famous black women in Boston, and we're going to do one for a number of these polls, pending them if we can raise the money to do the project.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Ed Gaskin from Greater Grove Hall, Main Streets. Up ahead, school sports with Pat Flaherty. But first, this message.